everyone, it's Christina Matthew, the Title I facilitator here at Devon Forest Elementary School. I have been getting a lot of questions about assessing English language learners. What is the best way? How can I modify this assessment? So today I'm going to go over some strategies that come from this book, Unlocking English Learners' Potential. And I'm going to do it in under 10 minutes because that's how long I have on the free version of Screencastify. So the first thing I want you to think about are what are the challenges that you face when you're assessing ELs, and what do you do to address these challenges? So if you want to pause the video at this point and think about that, you may. So we're going to be talking about formative assessment, and the most important thing that I want you to get from this is formative assessment is ongoing. The purpose of it is to help us inform our instruction, to help maximize our students' learning and their achievement. I'm only going to touch briefly on this. So there's three different things that we're talking about assessment, and it can be assessment as learning, assessment for learning, and assessment of learning. So when we're thinking about formative purposes, we're thinking about assessment for learning. So we are giving the students a task to complete, or a test, or maybe they're on Flipgrid, and that's helping us figure out if they understand what was taught. It can be an exit slip. There's a variety of different things that it can be. When we're thinking of assessment of learning, that's more of our testing. Think about for summative purposes, and it's going to happen on a specific designated time, and it's also that a test is the primary source of data. So think about like state testing for that. So when we think about the cycle of formative assessment, remember it's a cycle, so we're going to go cycle back through it constantly as teachers. The first thing we're going to figure out is we're articulating the construct taught and assessed. What is it that I want this child to know when it comes to content? So if I'm teaching math, what it is in math I want them to know, science, reading, social studies, etc. And then also what language does this child need to know in order to be successful in that content area. Then we're going to elicit evidence from our EL. So we're going to figure out, this is what I want them to teach, this is what I want them to know, this is how I'm going to figure out if they know it. Lastly, after we've given them that formative assessment, we are interpreting the results and we're determining what are our next steps. We're helping inform our instruction, and then we're going back to the beginning, figuring out what we want them to know, assessing, and then going back after we take a look at that data and starting over again. So when we're thinking about formative assessments, it could be more than just a simple paper and pencil test. Can they physically demonstrate it? Can they do a pictorial product? Can they draw it? Can they highlight it? Can they show you it? Can you use a graphic organizer instead? Maybe the graphic organizer has the steps on it and they're filling in the steps. Maybe it has main idea and details and they're filling that in that way. Could it be a written product, or could it be an oral assessment? Now we're going to take a look at some scaffolds, and this is probably the moment you've all been waiting for. What am I actually going to do to assess the ELs in my class? So once you know their proficiency level, these are the areas that you can do. So as you see, there's more support for levels 1 and 2, and it gets less by the time that they are level 5 or 6. So I'm going to focus here. We can give them access to a text or video and or instructions in their home language. Sentence frames can be used, and I'll show you some examples of those later on. You can use a word wall or word bank to help them, especially if it's some sort of fill in the blank or they have to label something. We could also reduce the linguistic load of language for instruction. So taking a closer look at our word problems, taking a closer look at our questions, ensuring that the vocabulary that's used on there are things that our students are going to know. These scaffolds can be used for all levels. concise background knowledge. So before they might read a text, you're going to front load that by providing background knowledge. So if you're reading about trains, maybe having some background knowledge about trains before they read that passage. Pre-teach the vocabulary, graphic organizers, glossaries, dictionaries, repetition, paraphrasing, and modeling, and pair and small group work are scaffolds that can be used for all levels, including our students that are proficient, including our students that are, their home language is English. These are things that could help all students. So as you go through here, you'll see that there are different scaffolds for different levels. So when we're thinking about assessing students, this is just a framework to help you. So if you pull up an assessment that maybe you've used in the past, and maybe in the past you didn't have English learners, you could put the name of the assessment here, or think about the name of the assessment. Think about what you are trying to measure in that test, and then look at the test and see, are you measuring anything else besides what you are trying to measure? Like maybe you're measuring their ability to write and complete sentences, but maybe that's not the goal. Maybe that's not the standard you're trying to look for. And then over here, you can put your English learner proficiency level and then what scaffold you're going to provide, because you still want to measure the same thing as your students that are proficient in English. If you want to find out if your students can use commas, well, that's not going to change. You're measuring that for all students. What's going to change is the way that you support them, what scaffolds you use. So now we're going to take a look at an example of how I modified a formative assessment last year in a third grade class. So this was for a TDA assessment. It was on the stone cutter test. And up here I wrote a sample response, which really helped me because I completed the assessment so I could see what the student process was going to be and what barriers there might be for the students. So here I have the first scaffold, which would be appropriate for probably our level 4 and up students. So here I have, this is a great graphic organizer. I have, this is going to be what they would use to write their response to the TDA question. Then if we move on to my next scaffold, as you see, there's even more support here. Over here, I'm using sentence stems, and they're just going to be filling in the blanks here. On the side, I also have the graphic organizer to help the student fill in these blanks. And this could be used for our level 1 and 2 and some of our 3 students as well. So as you see, the end result is that all students are going to be responding to the TDA, but the way that they do it varies. Some of them might have this as a scaffold. Some of them might have this as a scaffold, but they're all producing a piece of writing. So again, if you are looking at your assessments in your class, this is a great resource. Again, I am also here to help you work through it. I know some of you had let me know about some of your assessments coming up, and just think about it, especially when you have your short answer questions for our level 1 students. I know sometimes in social studies we'll have a short answer part of the test. Think, for my level 1 student, does this have to be a short answer? If you want it to be a short answer, maybe just provide them with a sentence frame. If it doesn't have to be a short answer because you realize, hey, I'm not trying to assess whether or not this EL can write a complete sentence. I'm just trying to figure out if they know the rivers in South Carolina. Well, then maybe make that question a multiple choice for the ELs. So just be looking through your assessments. I'm here to support you. I also have some other resources here when it comes to assessing English learners. So I hope that this was helpful for you. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me. Thank you.